Today we're going to talk about Pythagorean Theorem. Okay, Pythagorean Theorem is a way, if you know two sides of a right angle or a right triangle, you can find the other one. Okay, a guy named Pythagoras came up with this a long time ago. Now, one thing you need to know about Pythagorean Theorem is the characteristics of a right triangle, and that it has two legs and a hypotenuse. The legs touch the right angle. Everybody see the right angle right here? The legs come off of the right angle. Right? They have to. Right? For this Pythagorean theorem to work, for you to be able to find the right sides, you have to know which sides goes which. The legs are here and here. They touch the right angle. Now, what I tell people, the longest side is the longest word, hypotenuse. The shorter sides are your legs. Okay, so the shorter sides are legs, the longer side is your hypotenuse. It only has one hypotenuse. The hypotenuse does not touch the right angle. It is opposite the right angle. The right angle is here, hypotenuse is here. The hypotenuse doesn't ever touch it. And that's key for when we're solving for a side, because what they'll do, the first couple problems we're going to do is we're going to solve for the hypotenuse. Easy. Then they'll tell you, hey, we need to know this side. Well, if you make this side the hypotenuse, is going to be wrong. It's not going to come out right. So that's why you need to know the three characteristics of a right triangle. It has two legs that touch the right angle and has a hypotenuse that doesn't. It's opposite. The hypotenuse is the longest side. It will always be the longest side. Okay? If it's not the longest side, then it's not the hypotenuse. And again, one thing I want to point out, Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. It doesn't work on obtuse or acute. Okay? Only right triangles. So write this down. Okay, here is a right triangle. Okay? It's labeled A, B, and C. If you notice, the legs are A and B. It doesn't matter which leg is which, if this leg is A or this leg is B. It doesn't matter. What really is important is that the hypotenuse is always considered C. The longest side is always C. And this is Pythagorean theorem right here. It's A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Pythagoras, a long time ago, realized that if you square one of the legs and add it to the square of the other leg, you found the square of the hypotenuse. So we can use this to find one of the sides as long as we have two sides of a right triangle. We can always find the third. Okay? Here's what your problems are going to look like. So draw this. So your homework's going to say, finally the hypotenuse. They've labeled the hypotenuse as C for this one. They won't always do that. And they won't always ask for the hypotenuse. Right? So make sure you read directions. You know which one they're asking for. But here they want the hypotenuse, so it's easy. So Pythagorean theorem, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You should be writing that down. Always write it down and then fill it in. Now, what I would do is I would draw a triangle and I would label it. You don't have to draw a triangle, but at least label the sides. 8 I'm going to call A, and 15 I'm going to call B. Now, again, does it really matter which leg's which? No, because they're on the same side. So I replace A with 8, and I replace B with 15. And then I simplify, I do as much as I can. What is 8 squared?
64.
What is 15 squared? 15 times 15. 225. Good, class. C squared, right? What's 64 plus 225?
289.
289. So, do I know how to solve from here? Have we worked these kind of problems before? Yes, we worked them the other day. 289 equals C squared. So how would I get C? How do I get C out of C squared? I put a square root symbol around it. Now, we've talked about doing this. When you're solving for a variable and you square root, like the other side, you would get plus or minus the square root of 289, whatever that is. But is there any way that the hypotenuse could be negative? Can distance be negative? No. So you don't have to worry about the symbols. You just have to figure out what square root of 289 is, which it is 17. So C is 17 millimeters. And there's your answer. Now, one thing I want to point out. What if you were just doing this on the top of your head and you thought it was 13? Okay, or 14? Okay, and you said C was 14. Could that be right? Why?
Because then B would be longer.
Okay. If this was 14, would this be the longest side? No. So could it be the hypotenuse? No. So you either did something wrong mathematically or you set it up wrong. Okay? Either way, it can't be anything less than 15. It has to be more than 15. Okay? Good. All right. Draw this triangle. So finally, the hypotenuse. Okay, I'm just going to call 24A and 45B. It doesn't matter on those two because they're legs, and legs are the exact same thing. Okay? So I know that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So fill it in. 24 is A. 45 is B. And C we don't know. What's 24 squared? 576. What is 45 squared? It's 2025. So what's 576 plus 2025? 2,601, right? Right. Now, using a calculator, what is the square root of 2,601?
51.
It is 51. When I square root both sides, I get 51 equals C. So my answer is C is equal to 51 what? Inches. That's my unit. Make sure you label unit. Is it the longest side? Is 51 the longest side? So I must have done something right. Right? Any questions? Find a missing length. We've got a triangle here with one side that's 40 feet, one side's 25 feet, one side's X. So what I want you guys to do real fast is label those three sides, A, B, and C. Go. The reason I want you guys to label is I want to check to see if you're paying attention. All right? It doesn't matter on 25 if it's A or B because it's a leg. So let's call it A. All right? But what does matter is that 40 is C. So if you put 40B, it's wrong.
Oh, man.
I wonder why I made you do that, knowing you would get it wrong. I want you to catch that mistake. They didn't say find the hypotenuse. They said find the missing length. So you have to pay attention to the sides. So B would be your X. Right? Not your 40. Right? Again, that's why I made you do that, because I knew someone would get it wrong. Okay? Don't make that mistake now. It's good that you made it wrong now, so you don't make that mistake anymore. So let's go ahead and fill out Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 25. B we don't know. And C is 40. 25. What's 25 squared? 25 squared is a little bit more than 5. 25 squared is 625. We add to x squared. I don't know what x is. 40 squared. What is 40 squared? 1,600. 1,600. All right, let's see. Kurt, what do you think we do from here? I'm kind of stuck. I don't know what to do. That's exactly what you do. If your goal is to get x squared by itself, so you look at what's being done to x. You're adding 625, so you do the opposite of it. You subtract 625, and what you do to one side, you do to the other. So x squared is equal to what? 975. William, how do you find out what x is if you have x squared? So to get x squared by itself, you put the radical sign above both sides. You square root it. Because the square root of x squared is x. They cancel itself out. All you're left with is the base, which is x. The square root of 975 is 31.2. It actually continues on, but we're going to round in nearest tenth. So 31.2 feet is the answer. Okay. Now, how can I check this? Well, it's just one way that I can glance and make sure I did it right. Well, I could add 31.2 squared with 25 squared and see if it adds up to 40 squared. But what's even the simpler way? What's one thing I know 31.2 has to be?
Less than 40.
It has to be less than 40. Is it less than 40?
Yes.
Because it's a leg, it has to be less, which it is, so I must have got it right. If I got a number bigger than 40, did I do it right?
Nope.
No, because it wouldn't be a leg. All right, good. All right, write all this down. All right, now one thing I want to point out, and this is what this says. It says if c squared equals a squared plus b squared, then a triangle must be a right triangle. What we've done is Pythagorean Theorem only works for right triangles. So if you had a right triangle, you knew that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is kind of the opposite. It's backwards. If a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then it must be a right triangle. So what they'll do is they'll give you three sides and say, is it a right triangle? Well, if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then it must be a right triangle. If it doesn't, then it's not. So let's do the first one together. 6 squared plus 8 squared, and we're going to see if it is equal to 10 squared. What is 6 squared? 36. What is 8 squared?
64.
And what is 10 squared? What is 36 plus 64?
100.
So 100 equals 100. Is this a true statement?
Yes.
So is this a right triangle? Yes. There's your answer. I want you guys to do 4, 5, and 6. Go. Whoa. 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches. If I do 4 squared plus 5 squared, I set it equal to 6 squared. I get 16 plus 25 is equal to 36. 16 plus 25, however, is 41. Is 41 equal to 36?
No.
So my answer is no, this is not a right triangle. Okay? Good. Any questions? All right, here's your homework for today.